I'm happy to announce that our keynote speaker, Dr. Hosagrahar, has joined us from Paris. I now welcome Dr. Piplani to welcome Dr. Hosagrahar.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and we are so relieved to see you, Dr. Hosagrahar, back with us. We do apologize for this long distance coordination and a bit of change in program. It will only mean that for people who are in the online session can have their tea, coffee in front of the computer while we carry on, and the others who are in person may have to forego their tea or coffee because we'll be continuing with the session. Dr. Jyoti Hosagrahar, who's our keynote for today on the symposium, needs very little introduction, so I will do very little introduction. She is currently the Deputy Director for the World Heritage Center at UNESCO, based out of Paris. Among other responsibilities, she leads the implementation of the Historic Urban Landscape Recommendations, the World Heritage Cities Program, World Heritage and Sustainable Development, the Earthen Architecture Program, the Modern Heritage Program, as well as Culture 2030 indicators for measuring culture in the 2030 agenda across all cultural conventions and recommendations. She is hugely learned, has traveled all across the globe, has studied, has done research in different parts of the world. So I'm not spending time on that because I also know that she has to immediately after her keynote go for a culture convention. So I would welcome you, Dr. Hosagrahar, back to India in a symposium hosted by ICOMOS India. I'm sure it brings back certain memories to you when we invite you for this session. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very nice introduction, and my apologies to all the participants for this miscommunication in timing that with these global conferences and time differences sometimes happen. So I apologize for your having to take your tea or coffee in front of the screen or to forego it altogether. I do hope that you will have a moment that you can grab that cup of coffee. But thank you very much. I'm very happy to be with all of you remotely. I want to just turn to my presentation quickly so I can go through this as fast as I can and hopefully have a few minutes for interaction right after. Thank you all very much for your patience. So I wanted to just take this opportunity really as you're talking about the Historic Urban Landscape Recommendation, as Naveen mentioned, and you're talking about urban heritage. This is, of crucial importance from our perspective. And this is also the 10th anniversary of the Historic Urban Landscape Recommendation. So it seems very, very appropriate to be able to look at this a little bit more closely. The 2011 recommendation on the historic urban landscape is an instrument that calls on member states to integrate the conservation and management of cultural heritage in cities and settlements with policies and practices for sustainable urban development. It applies to all historic cities, not only to those which are listed on the World Heritage List. So it advocates also an approach for identifying, conserving and managing historic areas within the broader context using a landscape approach, considering the interrelationships between the physical form, natural features, and the social and cultural values. This innovative standard setting instrument argues for the integration of heritage conservation with urban development plans and processes in order to manage change to protect the heritage values, the outstanding universal value or the OUV in the case of World Heritage properties. The HUL recommendation recognizes the importance of aligning with and furthering the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the New Urban Agenda, the African Agenda 2063, and also the World Heritage Sustainable Development Policy. So there are, of course, a number of issues that we can look at. The recommendation highlights the need for new tools and processes to support this innovative approach. In particular, it focuses on the civic engagement tools, on knowledge and planning, regulatory systems, and financing mechanisms. The HUL recommendation has become the standard framework for the implementation of the World Heritage Cities Program. The World Heritage Cities Program has more than 318 World Heritage properties on the World Heritage list out of 1,154 properties today. 318 are on the World Heritage Cities Program, which is a thematic program. It's one of the 6 thematic programs approved and monitored by the World Heritage Committee. And this is very relevant because almost a third of the properties on the World Heritage list then are cities. And I'm not talking about monuments located in cities, I'm really talking about urban areas. From poorly planned tourism development projects and transportation projects to inadequate management plans and systems, all of these are threats to the outstanding universal value of World Heritage properties or the heritage values of historic cities. Nearly 50% of the state of conservation reports examined by the World Heritage Committee in the last 2 committee meetings have been in urban areas dealing with urban pressures. And more than a third of the World Heritage cities are coastal. And these factors are significant also in terms of vulnerability. And so these factors are significant for the protection of heritage and for sustainable development. And you see here Gambasan on your left from Côte d'Ivoire and the city of Split in Croatia on your right. The HUL recommendation, you see here other cities. The important aspect here is to look at the methodology for implementing the historic urban landscape recommendation, which is a complex recommendation that goes across not only, it goes beyond just the conservation and cultural heritage actions in terms of physical conservation, but goes across to other areas in order for the conservation to be managed. So we really talk about it as heritage management rather than physical conservation per se. In January of 2020, we had an expert workshop that took place in Fukuoka in Japan. It was called Heritage in Urban Context, which looked at the worrying pattern of situations affecting heritage sites in urban contexts that the World Heritage Committee had seen in recent sessions. As the main output, the Fukuoka outcomes developed a methodology to better identify urban attributes and a basic framework for urban heritage management that was developed refining the previous 6-step approach for implementing the HUL recommendation. And you see this here, and you can find it on the website of the World Heritage Cities Program, and also on the HUL recommendation website within the World Heritage Center web pages. We have regularly with the World Heritage Cities the World Heritage City Dialogues, which is a platform for bringing together site managers and city authorities from the different World Heritage cities across different regions. And we have had a number of these World Heritage City Dialogues. The last one that took place at the World Heritage Cities, the World Cities Day in October. And last year we had in 2020, especially during the pandemic, when we gathered over the year through a number of different meetings, more than 250 participants from 44 countries across 83 sites. And this has been, and the summary outcomes of all of these are available on our website. What was very interesting in looking at these issues during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns that took place in most countries through 2020 when we had the first World Heritage City Lab, which is a innovative co-creation platform where experts, site managers, academics, and city authorities are all brought together to exchange and co-create strategies and solutions, because the issues are complex with urban areas, and we cannot expect to find solutions coming from any one person who has all the expertise in all the required areas. And also the experiences of academics and experts is very different from those managing the sites on the ground. So the first World Heritage City Lab actually was organized during the pandemic. That was enormously valuable because it really focused on issues around recovery and resilience that are still pertinent today with the ongoing pandemic. The case studies and the meeting focused on recovery and rebuilding, as we say, building back better, looking at 5 different pathways for such building back better. One was a people-centered recovery. The second was a green recovery. The third, an equitable economic recovery. The fourth, recovering space and infrastructure. And the fifth, digital powered recovery. And all of these are available again in our, the reports are available on the website. So I just am touching on some of these to just share with you. Building on recent work of UNESCO on urban heritage, I want to recall also 2 other significant works. The first is the first global survey of culture and heritage for sustainable development that was carried out by UNESCO and launched during the UN Habitat 3 conference in Quito in 2016, called Culture Urban Future, the global report for culture for sustainable urban development. And this publication provides a framework for urban heritage management in line with the HUL recommendation that aims to put heritage at the heart of sustainable urban development. The second is a UNESCO and World Bank collaborative work on culture in city reconstruction and recovery, especially when cities have been lost to conflict or when there has been substantial damage due to conflict. They're also to do with disasters. But this is the framework for post-conflict, post-disaster urban distress situations and accounts for the needs, values, and priorities of people. The Culture 2030 Indicators, which Naveen mentioned a little bit earlier, is also very relevant for urban areas and for urban heritage. In recent years, UNESCO has developed this set of indicators to measure the role and contribution of culture to the 2030 agenda at the national and at the urban levels, and was launched as the Culture 2030 Indicators during the Forum of the Ministers of Culture in November of 2019, with more than 120 ministers of culture. These indicators are currently being piloted in a number of countries and cities, including many historic cities, and is a valuable tool going forward to support the furthering of the UN 2030 Agenda goals in World Heritage Cities, especially for Goal 11 on cities, as well as for supporting the implementation of the new urban agenda. I also want to mention here the Canopy platform for World Heritage, the World Heritage Canopy platform, which is a platform of innovative practices and strategies that further heritage protection for sustainable development, including the implementation of the HUL recommendation. So it's really looking at all historic areas, all historic areas and urban and sites. But at the moment, most of the examples are more focused on urban heritage because of the issues we've been having, and looks at heritage-based solutions for sustainable development. So the idea is to really look at very practical, targeted examples, ways in which the localization, when we talk about the historic urban landscape recommendation or sustainable development goals, they tend to be at a very global level. So to be able to localize actions, these are examples of localized actions. And we invite you to look at these, of course, but also to contribute to actions and activities that you're carrying out for inclusions in here, where you see or know about these such good practices. We don't really call them good practices because we're not passing a judgment. They're also the more innovative practices. We also learn a lot from failures, so it's very important I think, to always consider that as well. So this year being the 10th anniversary of the Historic Urban Landscape Recommendation, we had a major celebration in June of this year. I believe many of you may have participated in this. We had also historic cities from India that were participating. This was during this online set of events from the 16th to the 24th of June, we had a number of different events with 86 speakers, including 9 mayors, city leaders, and 35 renowned experts and from 39 countries. So it was a very vast set of exchanges. The key topics that were covered and the key sort of outcomes that people focused on were to do with governance mechanisms, financing models, heritage management in rapidly changing cities, heritage for sustainable development, and the holistic protection of the natural environment. During this conference and this set of events, the Assistant Director General for Culture of UNESCO launched the HUL, the UNESCO HUL Call for Action, inviting cities worldwide to raise awareness about the recommendation and accelerate inclusive urban heritage management through the HUL recommendation approach. Mayors and city leaders from all parts of the world gathered to share their experiences and perspectives on the application. So we really want to invite you to join the UNESCO network of HUL and respond to the HUL call for action. It's for organizations, for cities, city authorities, and NGOs. The idea is to have three types of actions that can be taken with signing on. The first is a set of actions for sensitizing local and national actors about the whole approach for implementation. This is primarily, if you're looking at activities such as storytelling by senior citizens, people who have been living in a place, who know it really well, having heritage walks, sort of awareness raising activities of different types. There could be other types of activities, but I'm just giving you some examples. The second is a set of actions to promote local consultation processes to empower stakeholders and to bring together public and private stakeholders to support an HUL-driven urban development approach, so that the idea that heritage matters and that private sector and urban development authorities come together with heritage specialists is a very important outcome. And the third is to develop a local heritage management actions and strategies based on joining the network to develop strategies, as I was just sharing a little while back, different types of actions. This is some of the outcomes that you can find on our website. I want to wrap up very quickly by touching for a minute on issues around climate change, because this is where we're also working now more towards looking at an HUL approach to addressing climate change in urban heritage areas, because over 90% of all urban areas are coastal. That puts most cities at risk of flooding from rising sea levels and powerful storms, and World Heritage cities and historic cities in general are particularly at risk because, as I said, a third of the World Heritage Cities are coastal, but also because cities have historically developed along coastlines and along rivers. So they are more at risk, more vulnerable. So the need to address this is more urgent. We have also established an urban heritage climate observatory along with the Group on Earth Observation and the Greek Geo Office to use Earth observation tools to monitor and document the impacts of climate change on World Heritage cities. I'm going to just go, skip through some of these and leave you with the last set of activities that I hope that all of you are. These are some websites that you could look at: the World Heritage Cities Program, the HUL recommendation website. Urban Notebooks is a monthly e-newsletter that we are sending out from the World Heritage Center, focused on urban heritage management. If you're not already subscribed to and are not already receiving this every month, please go to the World Heritage Cities website and sign up for it, subscribe for it, so that you can receive this. It's a free e-newsletter. The World Heritage City Labs, you can find a lot of material on the different labs on our website, and the dialogues and the World Heritage Canopy. And with that, I want to just recall some of the events that are coming up in Kiev and St. Petersburg, and with the Netherlands that we are organizing that has also to do with issues around management, sustainable development, and climate change, different events. So stay tuned in, and we look forward to seeing you at further events. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hosagrahar. That was a very comprehensive presentation. So the HUL recommendation, it's been a pivotal document to expand the discourse on cultural heritage, understanding, conservation, and management. And the reflections on the 10th anniversary of the HUL document that you presented clearly indicates this need to highlight local action and people-centered approaches to realize heritage-centered approaches to sustainable development. And it's been encouraging to see initiatives like Canopy, which highlight these local initiatives beyond the World Heritage Sites, and also things like the Urban Heritage Climate Observatory, which aligns with ICOMOS's key theme for the triennium, which is climate change and heritage as well. So we look forward to continuing collaborations and learning more from the various initiatives that UNESCO has launched. We have a few questions in the chat box. If time permits and you're available, could we go to them?
Yes, sure. We can see how many there are, and I'll be happy.
All right, so we have 3. I'll read out some of them. So there's one which says, pertaining to the current discourse on climate change making the limelight recently through the COP26, how can we perceive the heritage paradigm presently undergoing an interdisciplinary maneuver to be incorporated or accelerated through UNESCO, especially in the global south, where the new direction of urbanism and HUL have the most scope for rightful implementation and research interests?
Well, fantastic. I think that's exactly what, I hope I have been addressing, and I hope has been clear, because absolutely, there is no way that heritage management can be really taken forward in urban areas unless we're looking at an intersectoral approach, and unless we're being able to see how heritage actions can also benefit local communities. So, and when you really come down to it, climate adaptation actions and sustainable development actions localized are not that different. So they're very interrelated. When you're looking at more ecological cities, you're also looking at enabling more inclusive communities, and enabling more equitable societies. So being able to look at the environmental, social, and economic dimensions in an integrated way addresses climate change, addresses sustainable development, and is the historic urban landscape development approach. So I think that that's really how we are developing all the guidance in that regard.
Right. Thank you so much. And there's one more which speaks of the interconnection of the HUL recommendation, whether it's part of a mandate for management plans and nomination dossiers which are submitted to World Heritage Sites to UNESCO. Does UNESCO find any correlation and kind of insist on some of these recommendations to be highlighted in people's perspectives in their management plan?
All right. Yes, that's a very good question, because so the nomination dossiers per se are developed according to the operational guidelines. And the operational guidelines does ask for management plans they're very clearly defined ways in which the management plans are developed. But for the management of urban areas, the historic urban landscape recommendation is the recommended approach. So it is, so in a way, we are saying that, it's not that for all sites we are recommending historic urban landscape approach, so it doesn't go into the operational guidelines, but it is for urban areas, the management is really, with this, as I said, for all World Heritage cities, this is the approach that we are promoting, is the historic urban landscape approach, because that's where it's necessary to bring it in. You cannot do any conservation work on cities as if it's a physical monument that has to be just physically conserved. It cannot work that way. I hope that answers the question.
And we have one last question that we'll take up, which is, the Indian historic urban is so diverse in perception and scale. How does that get addressed by HUL's application in the Indian context? And is there a difference between the Eastern and the Western perception of the HUL and its implementation?
Thank you. That's a very good question. And I'm really hoping that by implementation at the local level in India, by all of you, you will help us enrich this understanding, because that's what we need, are the local implementation experiences and that localized experience and knowledge. That is very, very valuable. So if you can send us feedback on efforts that you have been making and what your experiences have been, that's really important. But as such, because UNESCO policies and recommendations, the conventions all tend to be at a global level. And when you look at the implementation in any region, there are sort of more regional issues in each area. And certainly it is meant to encompass the entire diversity. But nevertheless, when you look at its localization, you might have things that come up. And this is something that we would be very interested to learn about.
All right, thank you so much.
With us. Thank you very much. And I'm really happy to have had this opportunity to be with all of you. And thank you again for missing your tea and coffee.
Thank you so much. It's been absolutely inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I welcome you to stay on as well, if you have time.
Thank you. I am really late for another meeting I'm supposed to do.
All right, not a problem. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.